Hello again. I am Eric Peterson. I'm the CTO and founder of CloudZero, and we are back in the studio. And today I'm joined by my guest Vitor from Duolingo. Vitor, I want you to tell us a little bit about your role at Duo, and then just share what you love most about CloudZero, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Perfect. Yeah. So first, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Vitor Pellegrino. I am a site reliability engineer at Duolingo, and amongst other things, like I handle the FinOps practice at Duolingo. So we've been investing quite a lot into the forming our practice, getting engineers to care about cost. What I like about CloudZero is just like the superb visibility that we have using the tool, and our engineers love it. So I'm myself an engineer. I
Yeah.
also love it too.
Yeah, I love that's why I love every conversation we've had, Vitor, has been fantastic because we both are engineers at heart. We come at this from a point of view of wanting to build really great systems, great software, and in a lot of ways, that was always kind of one of the key elements behind CloudZero was, not to push people to just pursue cost savings, but to pursue better software. And I love to say that every engineering decision is a buying decision, and that the more that we can make the people who are making those buying decisions aware of the cost of their actions, the better software we're going to build. It's this kind of a magical a constraint that we can think about as a way to kind of push innovation. And you guys have done some pretty amazing stuff as you guys have kind of evolved your practice, built out the FinOps practice at Duolingo. It feels like it's become a big part of your culture, or even started to kind of transform the culture, which is something that is not easy to do. So when you started down this path, looking at the program that you built and what you're working on, what were some of the most interesting things you started to see happening as you got the engineers more involved? Like, how did you guys go about doing it? How did you think about doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we started, we already had like a burning desires from our engineers. In
Mm,
fact, they were looking for doing the right thing for the business, for the culture. We already had a very established culture of ownership there, and that certainly has helped. So I've also done FinOps in other companies as well. And what I found unique about Duolingo, and specifically what we're trying to do here, is like people were trying to do things, but they didn't have the right data to base their decisions on. So there was like a few situations where people assumed that their service were costing a certain amount,
mm.
but they were actually, that was not the actual
It
case.
was here, but it was actually here, it
It
was
was
a
the
little bit
other way
higher. It
around.
was oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So we had a fun thing, which is one of the aspects of the culture. Like we had a particular team, they wanted to tackle like optimization as part of one of their OKRs. And they were basing that under like a much higher daily cost. When they looked at actual the data, they said, actually, that is not the best investment of our time. Let's fix other parts of the
Yeah,
our software.
and so they use cost as kind of a way of prioritization in that respect.
Precisely.
Yeah. What was fundamentally driving it? Was it profitability? Was it, kinda getting, the kinda metrics in line? How did you get to that place where you actually started to think in those terms? What was driving all that?
Think there was a certain idea about being responsible and caring for the software that we built. And I think that the cost component is a one aspect of it. So we look at the cost as one of the many requirements that make part of building a functioning
Do you guys kinda think of it as like a non-functional requirement for how you
precisely,
yeah.
yeah. So one thing that we're doing and the vision behind that practice actually introduce cost as one of the topics that we discussed during operational reviews. So we have a team of people that they enable their areas. And whenever we bring that information, we like to bring like latency, user sentiment around what they build to get alongside with cost. So it's one of the main components that are part of those discussions. And people are actually looking forward to that information. They want to know what are the things that I could be doing to optimize how my software is, the experience that users have, and also the experience that, the developers have as well. And also like how much that is costing.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Now, I sometimes hear from folks like, if I let my engineers start thinking about cost, they're going to slow down.
Mhm.
They're not going to innovate as quickly as I would like them. They're going to, stop pushing out features as quickly as was that your experience or did it?
No, in fact, no. In fact, no. Like we're seeing that people, when they get the information, that is like a healthy constraint. It's something that they know, okay, these are the boundaries, and if I stay inside these boundaries, I'm doing a good job. Or maybe I found that there are a way to even improve things. So I think bringing that data and helping that to inform decisions has had the opposite effect,
That's
if I would say.
really so in some ways, dare I say, moving a little bit faster, you know?
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that. I think that we saw people that they assumed their systems, they were,
Mm,
like costing a certain amount. And when they actually looked at the data, they were so surprised and they decided that would actually their less push towards engaging into like a re-architecturing
yeah.
or changing how the components work. And usually I think like that leads to simpler systems,
Mhm.
fewer moving parts, which then leads to the
Yeah.
velocity at the end.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings is if I had more time, I would have written less, right? You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
like it takes time to do less. It takes time, but at the same time, it can be highly rewarding because you end up with a more resilient system at the end of that. Resiliency takes a lot of different forms. When you think about it, a more cost-effective system is a well-architected
Yeah.
system in that regard. And I truly believe it's fantastic to hear that you're seeing it in practice that, thinking about cost at the engineering level actually increases the velocity a little bit, and the innovation. It's an interesting thing. We live in a world where we have to reduce, when we think about what it means to spend a little bit too much, we have to think about using the least amount in order to achieve the objective. Whereas when we were running the data center, it might have been our objective to maximize our usage of everything that had been purchased for us. It's like a flip, right? What have been some of the other kind of like benefits that have kind of rolled out here? I mean, one of the things that we definitely started off on is how do we allocate this down to the features of functionality? Like allocation attribution is one of those things. You were probably stuck in tagging hell for a long, time in your career, right? We wanted to fix that, and give people a little bit more power to allocate their costs. Was that also, something that was, kind of delightful for the rest of the team, when they start to think in terms of not what they're spending on, Amazon services, but what they're spending to deliver value to the customer?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I think that is how you actually that's our North Star. So we have different ways to slice and dice our costs based on key leading metrics. We've been talking about different ways. Some of them are business related. I would say personally, those are the most important because that helps to communicate also across boundaries. So I don't think everybody, I should rather say, outside of engineering would know like all the differences in between each AWS system or whatsoever. But they would understand, okay, as we spend more money on these things, like this is how much value we're getting from it. So if we can normalize to that, that helps a lot in communication.
Yeah, going into a business meeting and talking about S3 and ECS costs and,
Exactly.
technology things, a lot of times nobody's gonna understand it, but if you can describe it in terms that are relevant to the business, because at the end of the day, we are all trying to run a business, right? Trying to be efficient and, your role as a software engineer, FinOps, focus, it's so critical to building that kind of efficient software. It's actually, I think, one of the more powerful kind of roles today in an organization. There's more scrutiny probably on when you go on a trip. You're expensing lunch than how much your code is costing to run.
Yeah.
So, have you started to see? Has there been any kind of surprising discoveries as you've gone down this path? Things that you didn't expect to pop out of this, or maybe you had hoped for.
Yeah, there were several, and that's a constant thing, in fact, whenever we run those trainings. So I've been running training sessions, enabling sessions with like other leaders in the companies, like the actual engineers, folks from finance. And I actually like to start with a few quizzes. Like for instance, like is our percentage of how much does, I don't know, service X cost in percentage to our total cost? And I get varying responses, usually overestimated by a factor of 1 or 2. And to actually get the proper data and having people looking at that, like, I always get some surprises reactions like, "Oh my gosh, I did not know that. Okay, let me actually now look at my system." And they sometimes, like, they have a good instinct, sometimes they are very off, but actually looking at the data leads to very often I have people leaving those meetings, like logging to our systems and trying to address and then like create tickets to fix things
Yeah.
right away.
They gotta reset their expectations,
Exactly.
but it's like a delightful experience. It kinda drives people to action, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I wanna kinda wrap up here on just one last question. When you think about how FinOps and engineering-led optimization is kind of changing how people are building software, how do you see that evolving over the next, 6 to 12 months for you, for the industry, for Duolingo? What do you see coming down the pipe?
And that's a good question. We would like to get a little bit more to explore other ways to slice the cost information.
Mm,
As I said, like we have business metrics.
yeah.
I had engineers actually wanting to have some sort of normalizing metric across services,
Mm,
so they could change, say they could check whether like their services are efficient in relation to peer services, if I can call like that.
gotcha.
So perhaps like something like a cost per request served,
Yep.
something that virtually every service does, so we can compare technology
Oh,
decisions based on that.
of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
common thing.
yeah,
Well, we're gonna make that a reality. That's immediately what we're gonna go work on immediately after this. So,
yeah.
Vitor, I wanna thank you very much for joining me here in the studio, sharing some of the great work that you're doing over there. Engineering-led optimization in progress, driving innovation. It's fantastic. So, with that, I wanna say thank you to our audience. Thank you to all the folks who joined us in the studio. I'm Eric Peterson, CTO and founder of CloudZero. Have a fantastic day in the cloud.